Success. Madam Clerk, please read the notice to the public statement.
Would you like me to take roll call first?
Yes, please do.
Councilmember Gomez.
Good afternoon.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Here.
Councilmember Negretti is expected to be approximately 15 minutes late. Mayor Pro Tem Cox.
Here.
Mayor Garcia.
Here.
I'll read the notice to the public. Persons who wish to address the council on an agenda item are requested to complete one of the white cards which have been placed on the agenda table in the lobby. In compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, anyone who requires reasonable accommodations to participate in a meeting may request assistance and/or receive the agenda in an alternative format by contacting the Victorville City Clerk's office no later than 72 hours prior to the meeting. Comments are to be limited to 3 minutes per individual or less as deemed necessary by the mayor, depending upon the number of individuals desiring to speak. All communications are to be addressed directly to the council, not the members of the audience. This is a professional business meeting and courtesy and decorum are expected. Please refrain from any debate between audience and speaker, making loud noises, or engaging in any activity which might be disruptive to the meeting.
Thank you. Now, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we will have Councilmember G. Kennedy lead us, please.
Join me in pledging allegiance to our great flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have one agenda item. Item number 1, pre-budget workshop, establishing the annual budget for fiscal year 2017-2018. The recommendation, any recommendation is at the discretion of the City Council. And I'll turn this over to our City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Council. This is our first pre-budget workshop. We labeled it a pre-budget because the budget is not ready yet. It is very much draft. It is essentially balanced at this point, which is good news when compared to this time last year. Our first budget meeting, we were just a little bit over $1 million still needing work, I'll say, which is typical at this point in time. So if any council members have actually read through the entire budget or been able to flip through the entire budget even, you've probably seen more of it than I have. I've been somewhat involved at a high level at this point, but I still have to review some of our major revenue sources, the cost allocation plan, as well as some departmental budgets. So there was a request a couple of years ago to get the council involved at an earlier point in time, so that's why we did that last year and this year as well. In an effort to keep us on track, we have 2 hours. Right now, based on schedules of council members, it appears our next opportunity to meet on the budget and have all 5 of you present isn't going to be until June 6th. So in the interest of time, last year we kind of ran out of time. I would ask that we kind of do an overview of the budget at first, kind of high level, and take any general questions, and then have each of the department heads run through his or her department to give a brief overview of the things that are occurring in that department, and then we take questions after that point, so we can at least get through each of the department head presentations before we dive into the details. Certainly all of them will still be around to answer questions if we can get through that. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to John Mendiola. He'll be handling the first piece of this and trying to do his best to keep us all on track, and then also assisting with especially some of the overall revenue projections is Christina James, who will be speaking a little bit later. So John, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Thank you for joining us for this pre-budget workshop. Like Mr. Robbins said, this is really a point of view on the budgets that it's really raw. We really haven't had time to go through it in very much detail. That's why we're coming to you guys as a workshop to get your input, which we value very much. on what direction you want us to go in. So as Mr. Robinson said, I'll go ahead and do a quick little overview. But before that, I want to make some introductions. Introduced on my left is Christina James. She's one of our finance managers. To my right, Joe Haggard. He's our information technology officer. And to his right is Josie Trevino. She's our HR officer. This is the main part of the budget team that gave direction to support staff to help us pull these numbers together and get these figures for your review as we go forward with the budget. Like Mr. Robinson said, I'll do a quick overview and then I'll turn it over to Christina to do some of the budget summaries and general fund overviews for the revenues and expenditures. And then we're going to go through, to keep this moving, as the city manager has stated, we'd like to get through all the department heads in this meeting to give their quick overview and then to save your questions to the very end so that you can have time to write down questions you particularly want to talk to each of the department heads, and then we'll bring them back up to address those questions for you. Okay? So with that said, we'll go ahead and pull up the quick slide. I'll go ahead and turn that on. So Christina's going to do a really quick overview.
This is just a main summary of the overall budget for the entire city. The projected revenue for 2018 is $201.9 million, and the overall expenditures for the city are projected to be $235.5 million. The main revenue for the city is 40% is charges for service and taxes at 30%, and expenditures.
Christine, you're going to have to speak
Okay,
louder.
I'm sorry.
A lot of us don't have great hearing to begin with. I got hearing aids on and I'm struggling.
Okay. The main expenditures for the city are operations and maintenance and personnel.
So one of the big things that you notice on the revenues, 40% charges for services, and you look at the $201.9 million revenue projected. If you look at the expenditures and you pull that capital number out of there, which capital ends up to be $41.6 million out of the $235, you're looking at expenditures of about $194 million, which is we're in a good spot right now with the revenues to the expenditures going into this first budget workshop. You know, just like Mr. Robinson said, for last year we came in here about $1.1 down, where we needed to find those revenues to pick up for the expenditures. But this year we're in a really good place. There's a lot of flexibility as we go through the budgets to gain your input as we go through the departments and see what priorities that you guys have that we can fit into the budget and fund for that.
Do we really have to wait until the end to ask questions?
You know,
You don't have to.
you are.
You know, you show a budget that's, when you just glance at it from a person who just walked in the room and says, oh my goodness, it's $34 million out of balance. I mean, why would you show it? Well, it's the capital, but why show the capital? Why not show a capital based on income and then have optional? If the income comes in, we have this. If it doesn't come in, we don't. Because it looks like you have a really out of balance budget. For first slide, we're up $34 million. Doesn't make any sense.
Well, one of the problems with an overview like this is that we don't live in the world of an overview. We live in the world of buckets.
I know.
And every one of those individual buckets has to be looked at individually. So this is interesting, but not very.
Yeah, and then when you take into consideration the capital, a lot of the capital does get carried over from year to year. Some of the major projects that happen on the roads or over at SCLA, some of those things will carry from fiscal year to fiscal year, so that will also inflate that capital number and inflate your expenditures going into the budget season. So the expenditures by fund type, again, your enterprise funds are going to make up the bulk of it, about $115 million. Then your basically your general fund is going to pick up about $59 million of that, and then it goes into your capital from all funds. Again, it's $41.6 million for the capital. Your special revenues are at $16.1 million, and then your fiduciary funds, you know, which consist of your CFDs and successor agencies, are at about $4.2 million. Again, here's the recap of some of the capital improvement projects that are planned for fiscal year 18. One of the big things that you can see pulled out of there is the streets at $16.3 million. And I know we've been heavy on streets lately this past couple fiscal years with the Bear Valley projects. Now we've just tackled almost $10 million worth of that Amethyst rehab on that. So that's a good thing going forward. Everything else, you got your drainage, of course, and the water at $14 million. There's a lot of infrastructure upgrades that need to happen in there too. So we're up, as you can see, we're up $8.3 million on the capital. General fund revenue by source. Again, taxes are going to be the majority of that. You have your property tax, your sales tax. Sales tax in blue. So all that's going to encompass that. Other revenues and finance sources, that's going to pick up $11.8 million. Of course, your fines and forfeitures, your licenses, your permits, things through the court systems, through the parking tickets, through your code enforcement is going to pick up for those things. Total general fund revenues, as you can see, sales tax, of course, being the majority. Then it goes into the property tax. And these numbers are based off of, we have a consultant, HDL, that works with us with our sales tax, and I think they work with a lot of cities, and they said sales tax is relatively going to be flat. So we pretty much did a little 1% increase on that. Not very much, but we think it's very achievable. There might even be a little more room to grow, because I know Cracker Barrel is coming in, and a few other retailers are coming in. When you look at the TOTs, the transit occupancy tax, a little more aggressive, but 4% adds up to another $40,000. But we do have two major hotels coming in, the Homes and Suites, and the other one off of Mariposa. So that's going to help out a lot there too. And property tax is picking up a little bit. We see that. We've heard that from our building official, that you have some developers coming in and wanting to build more residential, which is a good sign for us going forward. General fund by expenditures by department, again, public safety being the bulk of it. If you look at it based on what last year when we showed this same slide, public safety was about 68% of the general fund. This year, because the budget is a little bit bigger overall, that they are only 64% of the general fund today.
But it's $3.5 million higher.
Correct.
Yeah. Higher because the revenues are better.
Right. And looking at the general fund balance, we started off the year at 3.6 and 3.9, and we'll end up at 3.6. And then going forward, based on all the expenditures and just our first run, without any major cuts and without major reviews with the departments and going down and getting a little leaner, we're projected, and again, it's just an estimate, at 3.4 at the end of 2018.
Why is that?
We're not done yet.
Not done. I think that's it. Yes. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get into your worksheets, your workbooks. The first section is the budget summary. It kind of gives you an overview of where the money comes from, where it's going to go currently. Again, your charges for services are a huge chunk of where the money is coming from, along with the other revenues and your taxes. And then where the money's going, basically operations and maintenance is the bulk of that. If you flip the page, you'll look at it's broken down by category. Your taxes, your license, your fines and forfeitures.
What page are you on?
Just the second page.
Fund balance summary?
Well, your 2018 operating budget overview, all funds continued. Yeah,
Please.
right there.
Okay.
You're right on there.
Go ahead.
So again, just looking at the total revenues for all funds citywide, a little over 202 million, and again, that 235 in expenditures, and again, that's that capital, that 41.6 is in there, and a lot of that is carryover too, so.
One of the things I'm going to ask you about 4, 5, 6 different places
Okay.
is this item called other revenues and other charges. It's by far the biggest number on the actuals for 2016, and it changes so dramatically in 2017 and 18. When you start looking at individual departments, those numbers are huge, and the changes are huge in some cases. And other is just not a very useful term.
Yeah. Part of that on the expenditures category for other charges, a lot of that is your debt service that is in there, and I believe each department has some of that they'll answer to when they get down to their department overviews for you.
I don't think it will, but we'll keep going.
All right. Again, you know, your other revenues out of that 46.2 million, that big chunk out of the revenues is consisting of your cost allocation plans, your pass-throughs from the county. There's a $24 million VITA pass-through on there too. So that kind of explains that.
And Jim, as you adeptly mentioned, this is probably the only time that we look at the entire city as a whole. Every agency, every subsidiary district, every subsidiary agency that you sit on as a board. Typically throughout the year, other than for, I guess, we feel like we should look at it as a total number. At some point, somebody will want to know what's the total number, but looking at it and trying to get to some level of detail or find some meaning or purpose in combining all these funds, there really isn't.
This is for newspapers, but it's not very useful.
Right. It's better to look at each individual department budget, at the general fund budget, and each of the enterprises that represent the city separately, because as we all know, these funds can't be combined, except on, for something like this, that's just a summary.
So for today's overview purpose, why isn't the term available when we say other?
What?
Why isn't the term other not viable?
Because it doesn't mean anything. We don't know what it is.
There's
Other,
a lot of major
198,000 other revenue in actual 16, and now it drops. It was 51 before, and now it's 43. Other doesn't tell me anything, so
Okay.
that's all.
Yeah, one of the things that we're also doing for the first time this year, and I don't think you'll really notice it because so far it's going pretty well, and that is that rather than having sort of a dual system, where last year and years prior we had Excel spreadsheets that we all did budgets on, and then finance staff would take the time to input them into our accounting Munis software system. This time, for the first year, we're having staff input them directly into Munis, and so we have already found a few typos here and there, a few errors here and there. Those will get cleaned up as we move along, but I just wanted to mention that we could, in this draft budget document that you're looking at, end up finding some anomalies that don't quite make sense. And if you see anything like that, please ask. We'd be happy to either explain it or explain it as that's an area that we need to get cleaned up for the final budget document.
Right. Again, if you go to the next page, it's the fund balance summary. Again, we started off, we end up last year at 3.9, and we'll be starting off at the fiscal at 3.6, and then we'll end up the new fiscal year on June 30th, 2018 at 3.4. And each of the special revenues it's all by category, so when you look at those pie charts and you see the special revenues, this is what encompasses all the special revenues as you go down that list. From technology reserve fund all the way down to the LMADs and defects in the districts.
We're getting a big reduction in those fund balances, and it looks like that's mostly because of capital expenditures.
Correct, correct. I look at the public buildings, and again,
We got that negative, that's from this building, plus the
Sandy.
golf course building.
correct.
That's gonna take years to get that back to positive.
Many years. So.
At 150,000.
You turn to the next page, and again, the other categories, the enterprise funds, from the golf course all the way down to SLA's debt service is listed there for you, and what those fund balances are, and then the agency funds, with your CFDs, and some of the assessment districts are there. And then I think what's interesting, when you go to the next page, you have your expenditures by department. And again, each department head will be coming up and giving you a quick overview, a rundown of their departments, and some of the major points that they're going to want to present. But as you can see, administration, administrative services, pretty much even. Community services have a little increase there. Development, which took over animal control, moved it over there, so that was a big increase for them. Some of the other ones, public works.
Here are the ones that jumped out at me. Engineering goes from a pattern of 14, all of a sudden to 28 million in the 2017 budget. Economic development goes from 20 million to 4 million. And water goes from 92 to 44.
Well, I know on the engineering, and I think Brian will be able to, once we get into the department, see if he can bring that up. And I know there's a lot of capital, a lot of street improvements in the last couple of years that we've done.
That's under engineering.
Yes. Yeah, major street improvements is under engineering. Yeah,
Because
public
the
works
design
does maintenance, the project management side of it.
Yeah. As we turn the page, again, it goes to expenditures by type. So you have your general fund, special enterprise funds, your fiduciary funds, and then your capital from all funds, for a total of $235 million. So that'll take us into our general fund, and a quick little overview. Christine will come up and give you a quick overview of the general fund.
For the general fund, the revenues, the main revenues come from taxes, that's 73%. Property tax is about 29% of the revenue for general fund. Sales tax is about 37%. Franchise fees are about 5% of the general fund revenue, and TNT is about 2%. For the expenditures for general fund, like we were saying earlier, it's about 64% is public safety for police and fire, and then charges for services.
Christine, that other revenue is going up about almost $3 million. Is cost allocation
Yeah, the cost
increase that we're doing?
It's about 2.4 million.
What's in other revenue? Is it in here somewhere?
No, we don't have the detail for but it's cost allocation and then pass-throughs from the county for general fund. Oh, okay.
So that's pulling revenue from other departments and moving it into the general fund based on a cost allocation study.
Yes. Yes.
We have a consultant.
How did that change so dramatically from the years?
The last time it was completed was fiscal year 11-12. We used those numbers. And just everything's changed so much since then, and we have a lot more expenditure is the general department. It includes the general expenditures, including administrative services, city manager, city council, risk management, legal costs, general legal costs are included. So a lot, just increased a lot since 2012.
Yeah, 2012 was really the last year of major cuts. We've been through cuts in 2009, 2010, 10, 11, 11, 12. So that year would have been kind of a low point for activity through the finance department, through the HR department, that sort of thing. So as we ramped up with revenues, both in the general fund and in other funds, there's been a greater impact as a result.
Seems to me back in 2010, general fund revenues were under $50 million, with probably 40 or 40 million. Now they're close to 60.
Yeah.
Did the cost allocation change because of total revenues or because of actual changes in who provided what services?
It's a combination. It has to do with each service that's provided by those divisions, departments. So human resources, it wouldn't be based on revenue. It would be based on actual personnel work. For finance, typically we base it on AP, what departments, what divisions, what funds are impacting AP and what rate. So the cost allocation plan studies each of the costs that are going to be allocated and comes up with a different methodology for each one that's appropriate.
It's
based on the actual.
Stats?
NDS is doing the study, has doing the study. NDS will be used for other study work.
For the water rates.
A consultant?
Yes. Yes. If we just wing it, which probably was done, I'll say, 10 or 15 years ago, you run the risk of not having it succeed, challenge, be a lawsuit. The town of Apple Valley recently had one on their super something or other charge. Ultimately lost a lawsuit. The newspapers correctly have to repay $800,000 because they didn't have an approved cost allocation plan, is my read of what I read in the newspaper, at least, as to why. So, there's also federal grant awards that require cost allocation plans, per OEB circular, whatever the number is. I don't remember the number anymore, but
It's gone. It's now uniform guidance.
oh, okay.
That's a short name for that long name.
Yeah, it used to be.
CFR 200.
There you go. Yeah, it used to be OMB circular 59 or 87, something like that.
That's for governmental entities. Well, the problem is all cost allocation systems are imperfect, all. They're all based on estimates. And they are subject to all kinds of, I don't want to use the term manipulation, but all kinds of estimating.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon to get a cost allocation plan that gets us the answer. I'd just like to know that it's and there's the list of consultants who will get you the answer you want. It's a long
Sure.
list. So
Sure.
I'd just like to know that this is more than just sweeping or general.
Yeah, we are still in that process, I'll say. I don't think that the cost allocation plan is absolutely final at this point. It's still under review.
You know, it might be a good idea, I don't know if it has to be in a budget session, but at some point to come back to the council with some kind of report on it. How we do it, what we've done, how well the foundations were laid, how the methodology was developed. Not that it would interest a lot of people, but it would interest a few of us.
Yeah. Right now we are working off of sort of the final draft of that study. We are still getting input from departments on any impacts to their funds. And I am still in the middle of reviewing it myself personally. So.
And because without that cost allocation plan, we're in trouble in the general fund. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. We would have been every year for the last 10 or more, I'm sure. And it's entirely appropriate to charge those departments, those funds, for the services that they use.
Just make sure it's all signed.
That's my goal as well.
Okay. As we go forward, if you turn a couple pages down, you'll see the general fund revenues by line item. I give you an overview of what each component and what they consist of. All the way from the administration charges, all the way for working with other department agencies. So it's all there listed in detail.
Page you're on, Jim?
If you keep going right after that quick
I
summary.
hope if you number the pages.
I was just going to mention, apologies for not numbering the pages.
I apologize.
They were concerned about the numbers in the charts more so, and
That number.
So you're on general fund revenue by line item?
Correct.
Okay,
And you'll
so
see
we're there.
3 pages with a graph at the end on that, and then it'll go right into general fund expenditures by line item. So that'll give you some detail on what encompasses the revenues for general fund and expenditures.
What is the difference between sales tax in lieu and sales tax?
Sales tax in lieu is from the triple flip. They took
2007, the state decided to borrow money and swap revenue so that they could avoid the Prop 49, is that our teachers now? Prop 49 implications of increasing the revenues and 50% of that having to go to education. So they traded us on an annual basis 1/4 of our property tax for sales tax or vice versa. I don't know. The whole thing was overly complicated, and it finally went away. The bonds were repaid using our money, but not showing it on the state's books. They were repaid last year, and so that's why it's finally tailed off. But for several years, 5 or 6 years, we had to, in order to be able to compare our sales tax number, we had to add in the sales tax in lieu that came to us as property tax. Otherwise, it looked like our sales tax tanked even more than it otherwise did.
Well, sales tax has increased
It has. It has.
tremendously, and it's going to even more.
It's been very successful, attracting a lot of business to the city. So, in fact, if you go down to the end of Restaurant Row and hang out in that area for a little while, you might get run over by a tractor. They got a lot of things going on there, and there's even more coming. In fact, between the Walmart and Kohl's, there's new development going in there. We have one new hotel coming in that'll add to our transient occupancy tax. And the second new hotel is on the agenda tonight for council.
And it's the best revenue best tax revenue we can generate, because it requires almost no service.
And it's not just our population, everyone's
Our business centers do attract criminals, so we do need to hire additional deputies. That's why, even though our population base may not be all that much larger than our surrounding cities, our public safety contracts are.
Can we say that our business centers can attract criminals, depending upon cost of construction and how secure they provide it?
It can certainly be mitigated
Well,
some. but-
that's the whole point, I guess. It
Yeah.
can be mitigated fairly easily, and there's no reason we don't hold the builders to that standard.
I'll tell them my questions back, hoping that, I can hear what you were saying, that since it's not going to be the case, and that they're accumulating, I don't want it to seem like I'm overburdening you later on. Some of my questions now. These two are probably more comments. Next time, if you could, please allow council to have a copy of this. I'm one to take a lot of notes. It's good to have something like this in front of me. And then also, if you're able to follow you're going line by line, it's really hard for me to follow what you're thinking. So if you have a pointer and you're pointing at something like that, it just assists me more with what it is that you're talking about. Whether it's comments that are less comments for later. Thank you.
Excuse me, where are you, so I'll know where I am?
After the revenues, we're going to head over to the expenditures by line item for general fund. So you'll see that a couple pages where you are now.
Just a question, John. When I'm looking at the general fund revenues by line item, that same page, and I just happened to notice in 2015, we had 68,000, right in the middle of the page, hazard material handling, 68,000, hazard waste, 62,000. In 2016 actuals, it was almost nothing, and in the budget, there is nothing.
And there's nothing there on
What
for
happened?
17.
We gave back that responsibility.
Kind of a one-time event, okay.
The building permits, 2015, it's way up. 2016, it's up, but not so much. 2017, it's dropping. On the other hand, with the building permits, you have electrical permits, plumbing permits, and all, mechanical permits, those are all up. But the building permits are down. How does that possibly happen?
One of the things that we've done in this budget so far is we've estimated conservatively. In years past, I would say that we were more aggressive with projections. With a new administration, with our sales tax, I don't want to say it's going down, because it's not going down, but it's certainly not growing as quickly from a percentage basis. So it is flattening a little bit. I would say that the economy this year we're less sure about it, and especially at this point in the budget process, we were trying to be as conservative as possible because we don't want to err and come in and miss the budget mark for next year.
But for business license, for example, 424,000 in 2016, and we're estimating 190. Why would we
Go down
cut
that
that?
low?
Biggest reason for that is the rental housing, new rental housing ordinance that caused landlords to get a business license had a sort of a one-time or a one-and-a-half-time impact.
It's not an annual license?
It's an annual license, but the amount goes down because of self-certification. So, Chris, do you want to get more details?
Yes, the new license is $174 approximately, and then a renewal is only $84.
Yeah.
And as Doug was mentioning, we're hitting the whole city right now. So the first couple of years we had this in the budget, yes, we expected high revenues, and then it'll taper off. What we're finding is that not as many people are responding. So we're not getting the revenues as high as we thought, but yet it means that our budget might be a little bit higher for a couple more years.
Okay.
But not that.
Thank you.
Now, is it possible that we have landlords that do not have a license?
It's very possible. Well, it's not just possible, it's true.
I know.
Yeah, that's part of what Chris was saying is that we haven't seen as many come in as we expected as we have. So that's part of our code enforcement efforts is.
The way I see it is because I prepare income tax and I see that they do rent.
Right.
They're landlords. But my question always is, I don't see where they came for a license.
It can be difficult for us to identify them. We know they're out there, but it can be difficult just driving by a house. It doesn't say that it's a rental house. So we have to research, we have to educate and inform them. A lot of times that comes through code enforcement activities. If they have a code enforcement case and we find out they're a landlord, then of course that's the next question is, where's your business license? And we have an opportunity to educate them at that point.
And it's not my place to report them.
No. It's the place of any private business owner to report.
I drove by a house near where I live where I saw 3 commercial trucks parked out in front. It just looked completely inappropriate. They're still parked there. And I contacted Keith and Doug. I said, do you think this is righteous? And it turns out they did not have a home occupancy license. But apparently there's nothing wrong with parking 3 commercial vehicles on the street in front of their house, as long as they have a license, a home occupancy license. But they didn't have one. I see nothing at all wrong with us anytime we observe something that doesn't look right, just to contact Doug.
Oh, I agree. We would love for you to do that. I think Mayor Garcia is asking about her clients. That's her bookkeeping office. We're not asking her to make a list of clients who didn't happen to claim a business license on their taxes this year. Could have a negative impact on her business, and it's not really her role
Yeah.
In that office.
Not in that perspective.
Right.
Oh, you could encourage.
You could educate them.
No, I do. I let them know that they could be facing consequences later on, but I want you to know.
Where
They don't understand.
are we coming to the vehicle court fines, which should be hundreds of thousands of dollars? I didn't see it.
Where are you, Jim?
I was looking through this list of general fund revenue.
Motor vehicle and move?
No, that's different. That's,
Maybe it's in the other.
general court fines, is it just part of the,
Towed vehicles?
no.
No?
It's when our
I'm sure.
very efficient police department issues citations for the crazy
Oh.
drivers on the streets.
And,
Should run $1 million or so.
I know we get a portion from the county, and it gets coded to the general court fine.
Oh, it says motor vehicle in lieu.
Portion.
That's on the,
Yeah, that's a separate.
that's a separate fee, license fee.
You're saying when they issue a citation, the city takes a piece of that?
Well, out of a, at one time, out of the, when we had, with the cameras, sorry, just reference only, when the fine was $490, we got $32. We had blamed for 100% of it, but we only got $32. But on a normal vehicle citation, violating the vehicle code, we get a very small percent, but we do get something unless we're not issuing citations. The drivers must believe we don't issue them because the way they drive. It's horrible. We need to address it somewhere in this budgetary process.
I think that would be best under the county sheriff. Captain Schuler comes up.
It may cost,
Talk about the,
it may cost the city additional monies, but we've got to address it. It's out of hand.
We have a separate fund for that. It's under traffic safety. But it's still, I'm trying to.
Okay, as long as it's there and somebody's looking at it, that's
Yeah,
all.
I don't think it's separated out.
Okay.
What is the BSL rental renewal fee? Never had it before, and now it's $340,000.
That's the one we were just referring to, where if you're renting a house, you need a business license. So it's separated into the new.
I thought it was a building setback line.
And when we originally put it in there, when the 424 you were looking at, that's when we just grouped it with other business licenses, so all business licenses in the city generally, and then we pulled them out and wanted to separate out rentals from commercial business.
We'll get you that traffic safety number.
Just curious.
Okay.
Yes, it's Fund 201, under the fund balance summary. We didn't separate it out in under the departments, but for 2018, we're projecting about $233,000 revenue.
232?
233.
230.
And then we don't have the red cameras anymore, so that was reduced last year.
Okay, thank
Yeah, it looks like some of these accounts may have been reorganized a little bit, so where it was last year in one account, this year it might be in a different account.
that happens every year.
Yeah.
We've got something that gets moved for some good reason. But it does create some tracking issues for us as we try to look back 10 years and try to figure out, okay, why is this an anomaly here? Was it true, or did the money simply get booked somewhere else for some other good reason?
The charges for services are up from about $2 million to almost $2.5 million, and that looks like it's almost entirely because of the renewals. That seems to be the biggest piece of that increase. Actual against 17 budget.
Yeah, I mean, there's other changes, but yeah, that's certainly a big chunk of it.
We're doing an 18 budget, aren't we? Correct.
Yes.
17, 18.
17, 18.
Yep.
So the next section that you'll see, if you flip over the pie graph, you'll get into the general fund expenditures by line item. And that is by category, so there's total personnel versus maintenance and operations. So,
One more question, I'm sorry, I'm back on the last page of revenues by line item, just above the pie chart. You've got a line item called pass-through. It's always been there. What is pass-through? It's a revenue. I see the cost allocation increase. Pass-through.
Yes.
It's the money we get from the county. It's through the property tax distribution. They separated out. I'm not too sure about the details of why it's separated out.
So it's property tax, but it's not called property tax? It's not
Yeah, I would imagine it's something other than the ad valorem property tax, other property taxes. Just I'm guessing that this may very well be the redevelopment agency, former redevelopment agency pass-throughs. They typically call those pass-throughs. And just for information's sake, this is Christina's first time presenting this.
That's no excuse, she's got to take her whipping on that.
No, I know. I'm just letting you know. So we did lose Pat Rosenberg, who typically handled a lot of the heavy lifting with regard to especially the revenues. We lost her. She's now the director of finance in Barstow. And Bill Webb retired earlier this year, so John has taken even more of a lead role on this. But
Well, and it's okay, since this is his first pass, it's okay to not have an answer. It'd be nice next time around to have the answer, so that's easy to do.
yeah, make sure that
You know where our questions are.
Yeah.
That's all the purpose of this. I'll bet we'll find out next.
I'll bet you'll find out probably by the end of the week.
So then as you turn that page, you'll go into the general fund expenditures, again, by category, for the next couple pages.
And this is another item that, or list that is interesting to look at, but considering, if you look at the personnel numbers, you're talking about personnel from almost every department that would be rolled up into this number. So it's good to see it as a total, but there's not a whole lot of, there's a lot of detail behind it.
Are you talking about the general fund?
Yeah. Yeah.
How's that relate to the funds?
Well, the overall general fund full-time wages is $7.8 million. And a portion of that will be city manager, a portion of that will be finance, IT, some public works, some engineering, a little bit of everything. So other than, around budget time, when we look at totals and summaries, there's not a tremendous level of detail to be discussed about some of these numbers, just because they're summarizing all the departments that are about to get up and present.
Here's my question. Full-time wages are up $500,000. Part-time wages are up $450,000, so that's almost $1 million in increased wages. Benefits are up $400,000, and retiree expenses up $250,000. $400,000 as, what's that, 40% of about $1 million? Is that about the rate for our benefits? Because it doesn't include payroll taxes, it's just benefits, 40% of the dollar, wage dollar.
So do you know that figure, Josie, as far as just a rough?
Benefits compared to salaries, it's between 30 and 35%.
Yeah.
Or
And the biggest reason for that increase this year is the PERS decision to estimate the rate of return from 7.5% down to 7% on a go-forward basis. A couple of years ago, they changed the way that they would do the smoothing of their rates over a 15-year period and shortened it to 5, which created more volatility. And then this year is the first year that they've adjusted their projections down from 7.5 down to 7. And that 0.5% increase is the biggest reason for that cost.
That explodes out to an enormous number.
Yes, it does.
And it's still unrealistic, grossly unrealistic. 45%, then payroll taxes on top of that. I mean, we're talking about fringe costs that are more than half the cost of the labor dollar. My God.
Yeah, that's evident in our public safety contracts as well. Although the contracts themselves are not included in detail of the budget. I know that the overtime costs, a couple of years ago, overtime costs fell below the cost of an employee for the first time. Used to be hiring additional employees was a little bit cheaper because overtime was time and a half. And actually, the benefit calculations are now, as are ours, greater than 50% when you include everything. And therefore, overtime has become cheaper to a certain degree on an hourly basis.
So part-time employees don't have any benefits.
Part-time employees, when they hit a certain point in time worked per week, they qualify for some fairly basic retirement benefits, but they don't earn the same level of benefits as full-time employees. They do, I believe, earn new vacation and sick time based on new state law.
Oh, they do. Sick time.
Sick time.
Oh, they do receive
They
that.
do. Yeah, they do. Get, I think it was 3 days per year if they're above a certain
Certain number of hours. But it's based on the hours they work.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So as we move along, we can go into all the departments and have the department heads come up and give a quick little overview. And again, we're going to try and get through every department today in just a little over an hour right now. Get through every department, and at the end you can start asking the questions that the department head that pertains to. We'll come back up and answer those for you.
Now, I know we've taken a lot of questions so far. Are there any additional on the preceding pages that we've just been through?
Administration piece is fairly small. Would it be all right if we kind of focus on the big ones?
Fine with me. I was going to mention that administration, you pretty much know what that is. That's you, that's Andre, that's me, and that's Carol Lee. You know what we do. There's really no change. There is some, if you want to get into the weeds, there's some minor changes in the way personnel are being allocated.
Community service is almost level, to a little bit of an increase. I'd be more interested personally in public safety and water and public works. Nobody would mind.
Well, what, the other thing that stands out when I look at the right-hand, the last line, like expenditures.
What page are
What,
you
they're not numbered. General fund expenditure by line item. The last, next to the last page.
Yeah.
When it's, when that percentage change is huge, I have a question. I'm going to ask it, if it's huge, why? I go, why? You know, I don't have to ask you a question, you can see what they are. 100% change, 41% change, 148% change, why? Okay? I don't want to take up the time now, but, building maintenance, up 600,000, all right, now come on. You don't have to give me an answer now, but I do want an answer.
And honestly, Jim, that would be better done on a department by department basis, because even some of these changes that might be zero or close to zero may be a 75% change in one department and a 75% change the other way in a different department. And so when you roll it up into the total general fund, it would equal each other out. So it's better to look on a department by department basis if you want that level of detail.
I just want to know why.
Okay.
Then I can tell a few things too. Is there a legend or key for the acronyms here? I see a lot of acronyms. They're not spelled out.
We can do that.
Is there also a glossary in English to explain regulatory description of the things like specialized terms? I kind of glanced into the back and I didn't see that. And with the general fund summary, would it be possible to incorporate the percentages, such as I know Christina was saying that it's a tax of 72%. So as I was trying to write this, I figured it was easier if it was already embedded.
There is a little bit of explanation, just for the record, for the the general fund revenue, but more.
And then lastly, looks like we have the discussion like 2011, 2012. And so it really have been useful to have incorporated those figures in this overview for comparison. The length of conversations even for this year would have been essential, but I don't know if this was 2017, 2018, and bringing up what happened in the past kind of did help. I mean, it would have helped me at least understand like a big jump.
We've got 2 years of actuals. It's typically what we have. I don't know. The problem with trying to include multiple years of budgets is you start to have a space.
Right.
Horizontally.
So I just want to be included in the conversation, is all I'm trying to say. So if we're here, I kind of want to try to understand it. If not, if it's contextualized and say, you know, this is information that's going to help me, then I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. But at the time, I felt excluded, and I thought, oh, do we have 2012 somewhere? I think that's something essential and important, just maybe contextualizing so that I understand.
You're going to have to guess at what years are going to come up in the conversation.
Well, we'll go back to the audio.
Yeah. One thing, keeping that in mind, I think your point is absolutely correct. We need to focus on the big impacts, the city council's priorities. But since we have a new council member, I don't want to kind of gloss through some of the other departments. I know it's one of the issues that comes up when I meet with Councilmember Gomez is that a lot of her questions are because she wasn't involved in the budget process last year because she wasn't on the council. So if you can indulge us for a little bit of education as we walk through each of the departments, I think it would be helpful for our future discussions. But department heads have heard and understand the council's priorities, so we want to get past these other departments who are a lesser impact on.
But we can go by administration, right?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think we all know, you can walk in what the city manager's office does, the city clerk's office, city attorney, and city council does. So I wasn't going to have much of a presentation anyway. So, John, just keep standing there. Are you going to lead off administrative services and then pass it to your right, or how are you doing this?
We can do however we want to do it. When you go into administrative services, of course, it encompasses finance staff, human resources division, and also the technology division. We're kind of like the hub of the bicycle. Every transaction comes through us. So we're an integral support service for all the departments, especially all the service departments with field crews and everything. We try to make their life easier so they can get out there and do their job and not have any hesitation as they go forward to make things happen. As you can see, pretty much finance has a 7% increase. Human resources at 5%, and technology came down, dropped 13% overall. So the overall administrative services is pretty much even from what we were last year. When you take a look at what personnel and OEM looks like, 8% and 11% respectively on those increases. Capital dropped down a tremendous amount. We're still, because we are a general fund department, a lot of the capital that happens within administrative services is all mostly capital purchases with technology and trying to keep your technology infrastructure up to date as much as possible, which includes the hardware and software that goes along with that.
Did I understand you said it's even? It's up $1 million. The budget's $1 million.
I was just looking at percentages. So if you're looking at total operating budget for admin services going from 8.5 to 8.5 basically.
That's comparing budget to budget.
Right.
I don't care about that. I
Okay.
care about actual to the current year budget.
So the 7.3 actuals, correct. You're going up about $1 million.
Personnel is up $800,000. Have we increased staff, or is that just all raises?
Well, we went out for a chief financial officer this year. And there is also merit increases in there, along with the COLA from March to March that came up, that was in there.
But on the whole, no increase in staff.
Not in admin services, no. Except for the CFO, that one position.
Except for what?
The chief financial officer that was out for recruitment,
Right.
And that's budgeted.
and that's budget, correct.
And one thing you'll see, I think, across the board is increases in personnel.
Yep.
The policy that was adopted by the council either last year or the year before sort of formally adopting the March to March COLA that we've used for, I don't know how long. Carol Lee, how long have you been here?
As long as I can remember.
Mr. Cox, can you remember a time we didn't use the March to March for COLA?
Yes, 2009, 10, and 11.
That is true. But when it got brought back, it got brought back at those levels. But anyway, so that is in there. It was at 2.7% this year. I think it was a little bit lower than anticipated last year. Now it's playing catch up, as happens on an annual basis. And then also that the PERS cost impacts every single department budget right at that personnel line item.
Yeah, it's in personnel.
So we hired a new CFO or not yet?
Not yet. We are in the middle of a recruitment process. It's closed. I think the deputy city manager position closed yesterday. The CFO closed a week ago.
I'll turn to my colleagues to see if there's anything else they would like to add for admin services. Okay, so we'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to Christian Gunter, who's your Director for Community Services.
Good afternoon. Broad overview on the community services budget. We have some things that jump out relative to operations and maintenance, which are generally non-capital improvement projects. They are repair projects, things that we've been wanting to fix for quite a while, and we put them in this year. Things such as a roof repair out at Westland Sports Center, redoing and putting in an ADA compliant cashiers area in Cook Community Center. Those are the kinds of things. Personnel wise, we have a little bit of increase. We have 4 positions that we'd like to fill. Adding 1 part-time maintenance aide. We have a change for a full-time customer service rep in the community center, as opposed to 3 part-timers. We want 1 full-timer and 1 part-timer. We're also looking at adding a park docent or ranger position, which is shared between parks, recreation, and solid waste. That person would basically be out on weekends, checking on the parks, making sure things are picked up, cleaned up. This is also part of our overall plan to do a reservation system in the parks for the picnic shelters. It's one of the things we want to try and implement as well. In addition, we have a rec specialist position that we want to upgrade to a rec supervisor position. And we also have a couple of open positions as well. So,
a large part of the increase in community services is some of those deferred maintenance items that we're trying to catch up on. Those have not had a real strict level of review yet, Christian. So we may end up trimming those down a little bit, maybe spread them out in time a little bit. That's part of the draft budget that we're looking at.
and we have no problem with that, of course.
Why has solid waste gone up $2.5 million?
Part of that is how we've accounted for the MRF charges. The MRF charges for the material recovery facility. The materials recovery facility was being accounted for as a single line item, as a net charge, how much additional or how much extra expense we would have. We were asked to separate that out now so that the revenue side stays in our revenues portion and the expense stays in our expenses. That added approximately $980,000, I believe it was, to the bottom line there. In addition, we've had some COLA increases for our service provider, and specifically, we also have some additional equipment that we're going to be adding. I believe a new trash truck and also a gravel truck.
Right. One of the things that the council has made a priority is the cleanup of our desert areas. So we are going to be adding a crew that will have a second trash truck out there essentially picking up waste from abandoned areas.
Illegal dumps.
Illegal dumps. And in researching it, one of the, I guess, more innovative pieces of equipment that has been discovered by staff is actually essentially a grappling device, kind of like you see in an old-time junkyard, a big claw goes down and picks things up. It'll make our crews more efficient, and also it'll be safer for them. Fewer injuries, when you're out there picking up couches or whatever. And so we're looking at adding those pieces of equipment.
What do we do with that junk when we find it? It doesn't go into a landfill, does it? Sofas and mattresses?
A lot of it can be recycled, and we do. We actually have a very active recycling capacity. Jana Armstrong, who is our environmental services manager, we call her the recycling queen. She actually is finding new avenues for waste streams all the time. Whenever we have a specialized thing, in fact, mattresses happen to be one of the things that we had a huge problem with. There were very few places to properly dispose of them because of their nature in being layered and difficult to handle. And she was able to find a new disposal path for it. So,
Mr. Cox?
All of this is funded through the same fund for household waste? Garbage collector?
It's billed at on the same bill, but the household hazardous waste is a separate
Not hazardous, just household waste.
household waste.
They come once a week, they pick up the trash, we pay, the money goes into fund all of this.
there are
Is that correct?
3 different funds, if I'm not mistaken. 3 or 4.
I did.
You
I
have
read.
a landfill mitigation fund, you have a resource recycling fund, and the solid waste fund.
Right, but those are all paid on your trash bill.
Yeah. I just noticed that, I was trying to figure out, never mind, I'll go to the other one. I have an idea. We're trying to clean up the city and it's not working. I don't think a day goes by that I'm not driving and I see a new dump that somebody's created. The tires I can handle. I pick those up, I take them to our recycling center. Some of the other things I can't, and I certainly don't expect individuals to do this, but I do. But it seemed to me that it would be a wonderful project to have nice new signs. Illegal dumping fine is $500. And to go after those individuals and have a new program that says, if you turn those individuals in, you get a reward. You get half the fine money.
A bounty.
A bounty. You see the neighbor dumping, call. It'll be confidential. We find them, you get money. I bet you we'll start cleaning up the city.
Through the MRF, there is such a program where, you can actually take a video, send it in. I don't have the number and all that information, but Dana has all that. But through the MRF, they have that program, and it's, I believe it's either state or county funded, and they give rewards.
I think we ought to reward people.
I think it ought to be 1,000.
Somebody sees this.
I think it's 1,000.
And if nobody sees it, it's only a matter of time till the family members squabble and one of them will pick up the phone and tell us.
There's actually a viral video out right now, just this past weekend, of somebody with a drone who happened to see a truck that was going off into wherever, I don't even know what state it was in.
Perfect.
To do some illegal dumping, and he and another drone pilot actually followed this truck with their drones and took video, and it was on the news and everything, and they've now been arrested. So I think there's merit to that, and we'll certainly look into some kind of a bounty type of system.
Little Johnny gets mad at Dad, picks up the phone. Hey, give him a Christmas present. It'll work if we reward those people who turn in the bad people. It'll work.
This could be a source of revenue for the homeless people who are very much wandering, and they're more likely to see.
Yeah, they can run on each other.
Well, they're
than the average person.
But
It'd be worth really.
I think it's worth pursuing because somebody saw something.
Well, maybe Dana can give us
Presentation.
a presentation on it,
Or a
because I
memo.
know there is
We
a
could do a
program.
memo really easily, and then you'd all have it.
Yeah, because we
If
do
you'd
have
like some
something
more
on that
information, you
place.
can ask me first.
Yeah.
No problem.
Anything else, Christian, or any more questions for Christian? I want to be sure we get to everything.
Nothing else from me.
Do we anticipate the landfill costs going up from the county?
We negotiated them to go down, I want to say 2 years
Yeah,
ago. David's not
just
here.
wondering.
But along with that is an annual cost of living increase that's built into that rate. But it actually went down a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
I sat on the city manager's technical advisory committee for that and helped negotiate that for us. It's in the budget. We are assuming that level of increase, and it's worked into the rate as well.
And actually, you mentioned the rate. We are going to be doing a Prop 218 study in the coming year. We have consultants who, same one who did the water rate study that we just signed contracts on.
Right.
So we'll be doing that this year as well.
218 study on
Solid waste.
Solid
rate.
waste.
solid waste.
Right.
Yeah, on all fees, you have to have a 218, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's been a number of years since we did it. I don't recall in the last one. It's been a very long time.
All fees.
Sure.
All fees that are to members of the public.
Yes.
Building fees, we do a study, but it's not a 218 study. It's more of a time and money type of study.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chris Borcher, Director of Development. The Development Department consists of 5 divisions: building, planning, code enforcement, business license, and now animal control. As John Mendiola mentioned, the animal control division was moved in shortly after the budget process last year. Around the fiscal year, the animal control division was moved under development, and it's being supervised by the code enforcement department. We're able to combine their code enforcement efforts so that they're on the same page, they're doing the same thing, they're following the same laws. It's going really well. We have asked for a little bit of an increase for training for the animal control division. I think it's only $12,000. Overall, Doug gave us the direction not to increase our budgets, and we tried to hold to it as well as we possibly could. For Mr. Cox, there is a 80% increase in animal control. That's an increase from the revised budget from last year. If you go back to the 2016 actuals, it's 460 versus 457, so it's actually a decline. We did promote a dispatcher to an animal control officer, but we also, when animal control moved over from community services, one of the employees stayed there. So we lost an employee, so that's how the salary rate stayed.
I'd like to make a suggestion. When we finalize this budget, I have absolutely no interest in the difference between last year's revised budget and this year's budget and the percentage difference. The only difference that matters is the actual against the current budget. Please, don't waste our time.
The problem with that, Jim, is that the actual is from 2 years ago now.
Well, this is one item.
Right. Right.
All right. If you look down in the development summary on page 2 of our sheet, you do see a 105% increase. I talked with the information technology staff, and what that is, the development, when we adopted the technology fee, if you remember that, to help pay for our computer program, that's coming, it's on its way. When we did that technology fee, there was also the need for an expenditure to go with it, and that expenditure went into our budget. I imagine by the end of this process, we'll move that out, and you'll see no change in our budget no increase in our budget.
Sneaky Joe.
It's not, yeah. It's not our money to spend even, so it's interesting that it's in there. But that's where that increase comes from. We did not increase our operations and maintenance. We were able to actually trim it a little bit. As much as we could. We have a staff of 38 employees in those 5 divisions. Do you have any questions? All right. Okay.
Public safety. John, you're up. I'm up. I don't see you in here.
This is the one we're waiting for.
Hey, I'm the new guy. Where do I start?
I'd say start with traffic, but maybe go overall.
Well, let's start with the Schedule A.
All right.
For those of you who don't know what the Schedule A is, it is the county's proposed law enforcement service contract. This year it came in at 23,183.51.
I could go down the level of service, which talks about how many personnel are in each category. Do you want to hear that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that covers a captain, a lieutenant, 10 sergeants, 9 detectives. It breaks it down: 67 deputy sheriffs, 1 deputy sheriff canine officer, 2 school resource officers, 11 SSSs, which are sheriff service specialists, 1 supervising office specialist, 1 secretary, 12 office specialists, 32 marked units, 4 unmarked units, we call those slick tops, 1 4x4, 1 canine unit, 18 unmarked units, 1 4x4 Explorer, 7 pickup trucks. Those are normally what our S's drive when they're out there doing traffic enforcement. And
What's the total head count?
Sworn, right?
well, there's 70 deputies, 70 sworn deputies. That's not being increased this year.
And has it been that number for a while? Is it lower? Is it higher?
We added 2, I want to say 2 years ago, maybe 3 now. The last deputy that we added was actually Higuera, who is a deputy for Raiders. Yeah, we have not.
Is it included in the
There's
70?
no additional deputies included
Is it
in
included
this
in
year's
the
budget.
70?
Yes.
At this point.
So, let's see here. The pickup trucks, 2 Ford Escapes, there's dispatch services in here. The HTs, the maintenance with those MDCs, mobile data computers, taser replacement, amortized over 4 years. And then below that, it talks about administrative support, office automation, services and supplies, liability and bonding, workman's comp, and the county admin cost. And all of that comes up to 23,183.51.
Council will have a copy of it. This is something that comes to you for approval as part of the budget.
How does that 23 relate to, I see 21 as the actual in 16, 24 as a budget for 18, or 17. Where's that 23?
It's part of the 24 million under operations and maintenance, but there's other line items that are included in the Sheriff's Department budget and our police budget that are not part of the Schedule A, that are extra.
I can talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, sure.
So there are some other costs associated with that. Fuel, which is very, very high. We have vehicle maintenance that comes out of an operational budget. There's overtime. That's up to $500,000, a little over $500,000, which we want to up that just a little bit. There was a 3% pay and increase, and to equate that into overtime, we want 3% added to it. If we don't add it to the overtime cost, then that's fewer hours we have available for the deputies on overtime.
There's also a recent court case in Santa Rosa, what do they call it exactly, that it wasn't county sheriff, but another public safety organization, their union sued, saying that I'm going to get this wrong, Josie will correct me, but essentially all of the extra money that police officers and all public employees get, whether that's uniform allowance or whatever, should be included in an overtime calculation, sort of a total compensation, not benefits, but total cash compensation, should be included in the overtime calculation. I know it sounds fairly absurd because the hourly rate's the hourly rate, but the court decided in their favor. So ultimately, all of the overtime rates, not just for public safety personnel, but for all city employees, have had to have been adjusted slightly to comply with that court ruling. Was I close, Josie?
I was very close.
Okay.
Gabriel. And just for example, a lot of agencies have the fringe where anything left over after you purchase your medical, dental, and vision insurance, you can take that as cash. So let's say, for example, an employee gets $100 in cash back after they purchase all their insurance. That $100 has to be calculated into a new hourly rate in order to calculate the overtime rate. but in actuality, they're getting more money, a higher compensation when they work overtime.
And that affects benefits and retirement?
No, overtime does not affect retirement.
But what goes into the salary? If it goes into a salary, it has to affect something.
Overtime is excluded from our CalPERS calculation. Yeah. But they do get a higher compensation rate for overtime.
Yeah, and actually, depending on how agencies decide to calculate it, every single employee could have a slightly different overtime rate because he or she takes a little bit less or a little bit more or maybe no cash, left over after benefits. So each one of those may have to be calculated separately.
Chief, who works most in the overtime? Are they patrol or detectives? Or
We're tracking our overtime. I don't want to say a lot right now. Well, we are. We're looking at it. We were over 2 months ago, and we had to go evaluate what we were doing, where we were spending overtime. We got down to zero, so we're doing good right now, meeting our end year result. When we have, I'll give you an example. When we had the early morning restaurant burglaries, we must have had 15, 20 in the high desert, and with Victorville having the majority of them. We had to put guys, in addition to what they're doing during the day, we had them come in the morning. We had a crime analyst look at when these crimes were happening, and we built a team, 3 or 4 guys. We also pulled in some people from Hesperia and Apple Valley. We didn't have to pay them, of course, because that's the way we work. And those guys came in, and it was about their 4th day of overtime. They caught them in the act. Roy Rogers and I don't remember what restaurant it was, but anyway, they caught him in the act. Those are the certain things, those are the types of things that we do. Lately, and you're going to see this real soon, we're doing some traffic enforcement right now, extra traffic enforcement on Air Base Road. So I hate to call it a knee-jerk reaction, but when people ask us, what are you doing about this, and me personally, I go and I look at okay, is it a street thing? Is it a sign thing? Is it an enforcement problem? What is it that we can do to fix it? And when people choose to drive the way they do, it's hard to stop that. But we need to put some cars out there to slow people down. We put the speed trailer out there. So we use some grant money for these types of operations, and we use some of the overtime money. It just depends on what we're doing. So it just, when you ask where we're spending the money, it just depends what the flavor of the day is. Are they accidents? Is it a crime spree? Are we going to go out and are we going to hit people living in the desert making camps, drug problem, whatever the case may be?
I recently read that some police departments are going to start using drones, and they're going to have grants, and they're going to have training because they think it'll actually cut down the cost and give an eye in the sky that they don't normally have. Where's our sheriff's department on the use of drones?
Our sheriff has not considered the use of drones at this point. There has been no talk in any of our staff meetings. There's been no talk about using drones. I have heard of some departments using them. There's a lot of scrutiny when you use them. There's a lot of public concern over privacy.
I think when you look at the grief we had over red light cameras, you start talking about drones.
Yeah, our arson bomb, our SED, Special Enforcement Division, they don't have drones, but they have throwable objects they throw into houses, and they're remote control with cameras on them. And other than getting up in the sky, pretty much 40 King, our helicopter is available most of the time, and if not, H-80, Highway Patrol's helicopter is there to help us out. So we utilize them quite a bit.
Chief, public safety is obviously a priority for all of us. I mean, we support you 100%. And you mentioned that restaurant robbery. I actually happened to be on Restaurant Row for a meeting, and I was talking to the manager. And I just like to commend your folks on catching those people. But the good news stories don't get told very often. But one of the things that was an added benefit, the restaurant I was in was not victimized. However, of course, I'm sure everyone was concerned. And one of the deputies did come and basically brief the restaurant manager sort of what's been going on, what to, you know, and that communication to the restaurant manager just made them feel so much better about the whole thing. Because you're talking about, you know, obviously money being exchanged, cash available, all kinds of issues. So anyway, like I said, it was a great job, and we support you 100%. One of the things that's difficult being here in this position is that our population keeps increasing, and our revenues, since I've been here, have increased, but so have our expenses. So again, knowing public safety is a priority, how many deputies would you say you would need, sort of just in the short term or the long term? I don't know if you talk about this. I don't know what right size looks like, but do you have a recommendation other than as many as we can get you? Is that fair to say?
You keep it under 200.
I've been here 4 months, right? And I was here in 2007 to 2009, and you know, when everybody's healthy, when I don't have anybody off on that's sick or gets injured, and you know, the city they get their refund when somebody's off for so many days and whatnot. If I get everybody healthy, we do okay. I don't want to sit here and say, you know, that we're good right now, because I think we could do better. You're right. For me to stand here and give you a figure, I don't want to do that. I mean, I have a number in my head. I had it a long time ago on how many I wanted, and then I even lowered it a little bit recently when I started getting some of my deputies back that were injured. You know, we have 49 that are on patrol, and then the rest, you know, you divvy out into the major enforcement team, the game team. You put one in the detective bureau. You put 7 in traffic. And then you know, you divvy them out into your day shift or night shift, and then you got your vacations that you got to worry about. So we try to keep a certain amount out there, and I try not to tell people how many are out on the streets for obvious reasons. But yes, it would be nice to have more people out there. And you know, I know when you look at population and you look at how many patrol officers or deputies you're supposed to have per population, there's a formula. You know, I don't want to go look at that formula. You know, I know that there are cities out there that are comparable to us that have a lot more safety personnel, that have a lot more deputies and officers that are out there working. But then again, that city's in a different position. You know, I know that we're busy here, and our guys do. You know, they pride themselves on doing a good job, getting to the calls quick. But you know, they do take a licking when somebody calls and says, "Hey, why did it take you 5 hours to get to my call?" Well, our guys get really good at explaining priority calls, and hey, you know, without trying to sound like we're short people, they tell them that you know, their call, you know, I had to go to the traffic accident where somebody was bleeding, or I had to go to the armed robbery, and you know, it does get old doing that, but our guys manage, and they make do. You know, we have a system here that's working right now. Can it be better? You know, and I say, yeah, it could be. And yeah, if we want to talk numbers, I definitely could do some more research and give you that number that I think would help out. But yes.
You mentioned 2 school resource officers. Is that matched by the schools or?
75%.
75%?
Yeah, schools pay. It's the elementary district pays for those 2, one on the east side, one on the west side of the town. And we pick up 25% of that cost. They pick up 75% of that cost.
And high school?
High school, several years ago, decided to do away with their school resource officers and instead hired additional private security. That is a tremendous issue for us because when they have an incident, they call, and Captain Schuler sends his guys out there, or ladies too. You know, to say it's unfair is maybe unfair, or maybe it's not. I don't know. You know, one of the other districts in the city obviously has stepped up and made a different decision. But you know, I'm not here. I don't have the high school district's budget in front of me to tell them what to do.
I'm kind of familiar with. Well, I was at one time. I'm kind of familiar with that school resource officer, how it works at the elementary school district, high school district. My question is, how is it working? Does anybody tell you what
My two deputies that are working at the
Well, as
schools?
compared to, would we be better off to have the elementary school district hire their own deputies the way the high school did, or would the high school be better off to support?
The high school didn't hire deputies, they hired private security.
I meant private security, I know, but which one works the best? Do we know, do you know, do you care?
No, I do care.
I thought so.
Our schools where the two deputies are, they love our deputies.
Okay.
They're, every time I see them, every time I talk to anybody who's working the schools, they talk to them about how they appreciate, number one, that they're on the school campus, they're visible. And number two, they're always available when there's some type of incident that goes on, and how they are, I don't want to say hands-off, but they make good discretionary decisions when there's some type of enforcement action that needs to be taken. So they like that availability. I do know when I was here in 07, 09, you talk about the deputies that were at the high school. Those deputies were busy non-stop, and we do take note of how many times we go out to the high school. We were out there just last week for a threat that came in, and you know how school threats are. You know the active shooter type stuff that goes on. So we have to take those seriously, and we have to devote a lot of time. And I at least had 2 detectives and a deputy that worked that for about 16 hours until we vetted everything out and found out that it wasn't a threat. But it's what we have to do because we can't get caught off guard. But you know, if the school's paid for it, or if it was possible, I would like to put it would be nice to put somebody back at the high school.
Yeah, I've had that conversation with the superintendent several times. I know that they look at it every year to see if they can fund that, and they haven't quite gotten there yet. They've got a lot of priorities, just like we do.
Well, my final comment, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Captain Schuler, but so it's safe to say that this is a high priority. It's a critical need. I understand the priorities. We can't do everything we'd like to do. So obviously, when I look at the budget every year, the first thing I look at is if we're adding deputies. I mean, just what I zero in on. And I wish we could add 2 a year. That'd be ideal for me. But if we can't, maybe we can add 1, or maybe not this year, but maybe next year. But I feel like we should have more, obviously. And the number one comment I get from people that either live in the city or don't live in the city is crime. And I, like I said, I'm probably not breaking any new ground here, but and I would just ask the city staff if there's any way, if revenues keep increasing, if we could be a little creative and even add 1 next year, that'd be ideal. But and again, it's nobody's fault. I'm not pointing any fingers. It just my comments going forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Negrete. Just one thing that you didn't catch at the beginning because you were a little bit late is at this point the general fund, the overall budget is essentially balanced, but it's not done yet. We are still working on it. I joked with Christian a little bit that I can tell you right now some of his more capital type of maintenance is going to come down before we're done. I haven't had a chance to get into the details on our 2 highest revenue sources, sales tax and property tax. Sales tax a little bit, property tax not at all. So I do expect some changes there, and I think by the time we have another meeting here in about a month, we want to deliver the council some additional funding. You know, not that revenues are going to go up, expenditures are going to go down, or whatever however they sort out. We want to come back with some discretionary funds that isn't essentially what we've been doing, so that you can maybe decide if you want to add a sheriff's deputy or 2, if you want to increase our reserves, if you want to do some other things. So that's still coming.
Chief, can you give us a rough idea of what it costs to add a deputy, realizing that there's things that come with it, like another car and so on?
It's about $250,000.
That's probably about right. Yeah.
Does every new deputy require a new vehicle?
No, not quite.
Probably not.
But it's not quite half. It's more than half. So if you hired 2, you could probably get away with 1 new vehicle. If you hired 3, you'd probably need 2 new vehicles.
So if we did 2, is 400,000 a realistic number?
No.
think
No,
so.
no, $250,000 is essential.
It's still a
Yeah.
quarter of a million.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, it's difficult because some of the costs are embedded in, some of the administrative costs. Like CalCap which is the county's cost allocation plan, is what, 900,000 or so this year? It's based on
875, the admin cost?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
875.
CalCap is 875 this year. That's based on just under 6%, I think, of all personnel costs. So that would go up slightly. The number of vehicles would go up slightly. All the risk management costs would go up slightly. Eventually, as you add deputies, you get into some supervision, have to add a corporal and dispatch, all sorts of things. So our rough number, it might be, for one or two, you might get maybe a little bit closer to 225, but it really is $250,000.
So if we can find $500,000, that would be an opportunity to add to.
Actually,
What happened tomorrow?
and that's what we intend to, when we come back in a month for the next workshop, it'll be.
And if we can find $1 million.
I don't think we could win them out.
One thing, I would be remiss, Captain Chuler's not going to tell you this. Well, he probably would if you asked him, but one of the things that I was presented with my annual meeting with the sheriff was that even though the deputy salaries went up 3% this year, 3% next year, 3% the year after, there was some retirement costs. They too are adjusting from 7.5 down to 7% on a go-forward projection basis. Because of some risk management costs that were high last year, they were able to save us this year, so the Schedule A didn't go up as much as we may have anticipated, but retirement costs alone for our existing deputies for the 18-19 budget is going to go up by about $1.3 million. And over the next 5 years, that grows to $2.5 million annually that's strictly the retirement cost alone. Just keep that in mind as you add deputies. You're committing yourselves to many, many years. I 100% agree that we need to add deputies. I'm not trying to talk you out of it, but...
well, the money talks you out of it.
Yeah.
I think that retirement increase was based on projections on how well their investments work, and they're being very cautious. So if the investments don't come out the way they planned, I think they're telling the contract city to be aware that this could happen.
So I'm going to interject here. I know we had a conversation. I was hoping you had a response. I met with you not too long ago. I sent several emails at CC2, State Assembly. So we talk a lot about crime, but I think also the need to have building relationships with the community would also offset some of that, because there's a very many variables. So talking with a cop is what I brought in discussion. I know you were going to look into Highland or things of that nature, so I was wondering if you've done something like that, or how is that in the works?
Yeah, that's a good idea. We're real close to kicking that off. Yep. It's coming.
Okay. Anything else for Captain Chu? Thanks, John. The fire budget this year, Chief Mejia isn't here. The increase is about $350,000. They would very much like us to use some of the potential discretionary money that we're going to try to scrape up here over the next month on buying a new fire truck.
County fund?
Yes, county fire. The city would buy the truck. We all know that we are in the process of reviewing options and expect to be back in front of the council on June 6th as well with options for fire services. So the notion that if we're going to give this to the county, why wouldn't we buy a truck is somewhat irrelevant. Ultimately, the people of Victorville do need a new fire truck, just as we do need additional deputies. And whether that is ultimately has a county seal on the side or a city seal on the side, the revenue source is essentially the same. So that's one of the other things that we're going to be looking at as we get a little bit closer to the end of the budget. But that project is nearing completion. We had hoped to be in front of you a little bit earlier than now, and unfortunately, because of some complications with it, we are going to have to wait until June mostly because of scheduling issues. We can't get all 5 of you here again until early June, it looks like. With that, who is left? Public Works, Water Engineering. Looks like Mr. Matthews is on his way.
We're going to have a few minutes before the time.
Yeah, you only have about 3 or 4 minutes, because we're going to start the council meeting at 5, and we can't, I mean, we have enterprise fund, capital improvements, economic development, so we're going to have another study session, don't you think?
We intended to have one now on the 6th of June. I'd like to have one earlier than that.
So would I.
I'll ask the city clerk to look at scheduling options. I know when we've looked so far, it's not pretty. So. Doug, you want to come up and just move quickly?
Jim Lesky. So Doug Matthews, Director of Public Works and Water, several different divisions, about 125 employees, 70 public works, about 55 water. The good news for me is our general fund is very small. The bad news of that is we're the recipient of a lot of the cost allocations. So we can get through this fairly quickly. If you want to flip to the general fund tab.
To which fund?
General fund. We can hit that quickly.
Back to the general fund? Right?
Yes, sir.
I don't know. What's that?
At the beginning, general fund.
All right.
Well, you're part of it.
Yes. So if you look there, under expenditures, you'll see public works. You'll see $1.1 million going to $1.2 million. It's a 10% increase right there. That's basically fleet and graffiti. You see that down there?
On the summary page, right?
Yes, general fund summary, very first page. On expenditures, we're almost at the bottom, public works. That is fleet and graffiti. Fleet's about $1 million a year budget. Graffiti is about $87,000 a year O&M. The 10% is basically some capital equipment, some personnel, not additional, just increased costs, and a new truck for graffiti. So that handles public works in the general fund.
Again, Doug, the 10% is budget to budget. If you look at actual budget, it's more like 7%.
Okay. All right.
Actual in 2016 was $1 million, and you're going to $1,280,000.
Right. We'll hit that $1.1 million this year. It'll be there.
And what's in there again? Graffiti and what?
And graffiti. Fleet and graffiti. Fleet's roughly $1 million a year. It's cost allocated. Graffiti's not
What
cost
does
allocated.
actuals mean? Do they mean actual?
So 2016?
Is that 16, 17?
That would be, it's 16.
Last fiscal.
Yeah. That's in the books.
Can I make a suggestion that when we do these headings, 1 year doesn't help. We need to know that the fiscal year, 15/16, 16/17.
And that's all we're working with, Dave.
I've been thinking that those are our projections for for this current year actual.
No.
And we're labeled FY16 as in fiscal year ending 16.
Yeah, but in the income tax world, our fiscal years start and then you're throwing me. Can we just put the both years in the heading? Is there any reason we can't do that?
It helps. It helps. 15, 16, 16, 17.
Yes, BCA.
So now we know. 15, 16, it's not 16, 17.
Right.
Oh,
So we're
thank
scheduled
you.
for $1.1 million this year. We'll get, it's pretty consistent.
So the budget, the revised 17 budget is probably pretty close to the current year actual.
Getting close.
That is the number we ought to be.
Getting close. Right.
Okay,
Correct.
so we have to figure out the heading.
Is that because graffiti is only on water? It's not parks or community services that doesn't pay for any of it?
It is.
Why is graffiti underwater?
Why isn't, because graffiti is under general fund covered by the whole city.
It's not under water, it's under
No, it's under
public
public
works.
works.
It's under public
Right.
works.
Right, graffiti abatement's under public works.
Okay.
So whether it's a water tank or a private citizen or a business, it's all the same graffiti crew, but still for $87,000 a year they run on, they're doing a tremendous job out there.
You know, they are doing a terrific job. I'll be going to work and I see graffiti, and by the time I'm going home, it's gone. I mean, they do a terrific job.
Yeah, we get good citizen engagement on that.
Great results.
Back up, Jeff.
Certainly.
You got a total operating budget of $113 million.
Where are you going to now?
I'm back in
Public Works Department center.
But in the general fund, you got $1 million.
Right.
So your department spans a bunch of different,
We're headed there. I would just start at the front.
all you're doing is trying to tell us what the general fund piece of your total budget.
That's all this was. This is the general fund. So when I talk about the different divisions, we're going to look at them by fund, and that's the way they're separated in this book. So when we look at the different funds, then we can look at what they're comprised of. So this is just a very small piece of the general fund. There's a little increase on.
And it's only graffiti.
And fleet.
Fleet.
Yeah.
Fleet.
Fleet's about $1 million of it.
Fleet, you mean...
Fleet operations.
Vehicles?
Yes, equipment and vehicles.
They're in the general fund.
Yes, but they're cost allocated to all the departments who have vehicles and equipment.
What?
Police, 100% cost allocated out to the departments based on what equipment and vehicles they have. So whoever
So the cost allocation revenue item picks up that portion of the fleet that gets spread around.
But it's just collected in the general fund. It's a general fund department.
Okay.
Well, my departments pay for a lot of that fleet anyway, $1 million. It comes out of water, sewer, different divisions of that nature. We can flip to the Public Works tab.
The summer?
Pardon me?
The
Public
summer?
Works tab. There's a tab there, Public Works.
Yes, yeah, the summary.
Yeah, start on the summary page. You'll see my two departments there are Public Works and Water. Public Department summary. So under Public Works, you'll see essentially a $3 million increase. That is essentially in the sewer fund. It's $2.2 million for CCTV.
What's that?
The cammering systems that are doing the entire city. We're having to go out and look at all the...
Ms. Gomez is right. Please avoid the acronyms. We're not that sure.
And it's about 600,000 of the BBWA passengers. So there's about 2.8 million. The rest is in legal, cost allocation, and some other things. So that $3 million, if you look at all the public works departments, is essentially, you can look at it as a sewer increase as far as that goes. As a high overview. On the water side, if you look, it's just a slight increase on there.
What in the world is that?
92 million?
Is it 92 million?
We were looking, that's some fund transfers. That's some, what was that, Janelle? Transfers out, so we'll have to get you
Is
information on
that
that.
when we moved the
Sewer treatment
treatment
plant and
plant?
certain things?
Probably, yeah.
We saw some $30 million and $36 million transfers.
See, I was looking at that thinking that was this current fiscal year,
Yeah.
but it's
If,
the year
yeah,
before.
if Pat Rosenberg were still here, she'd have the answer out top of her head, but I would imagine that's the...
It looks like about the right number,
Yeah.
50 million.
IWW,
I think that's what
the industrial wastewater treatment facility, or treatment plant, at SCLA.
Okay.
So largely, out of all the public works divisions, they're mostly flat except for the sewer. Because you look at $30 million increases coming out of sewer. The rest are generally flat.
So how much money is in sewer? Since we have sewer fees and we collect it, how much money is?
Why don't we have sewer separated?
Why don't we have
We'll go
sewer?
back, it'll be in here.
Oh, okay.
I just started on the very first page of it. It'll be in the enterprise funds. Yeah. So flip to the enterprise fund, and it'll be on the second page.
Sanitary?
Yes, 425. And that's a shared fund. As you can see, expenses by group between quite a few departments and divisions. My end of that is that I highlighted today was the sewer portion. I do have wastewater treatment as well, but we took that out of that fund. That's why that zero is put in its own fund into 412.
What are the charges now?
In charges for?
I'm sorry? In 425, charge for services, sanitary.
They're down 1%.
Am I in the wrong place?
I think,
What, right here?
I don't understand that.
You with me?
You're on the right fund, 425.
Looking at the 15-16 year, then this current year. Why are they down almost $2 million?
Oh, so, well, the current year is 17. That's 11.5.
Right.
The projected year is 11.4. And I think one of the reasons it went down from 16 to 17 was some of that revenue started going to the treatment plant. I'm pretty sure. Is that right, Keith?
Yeah, that looks like, but we charge the customer the same regardless of where the flow goes.
You'll just see it in the other fund. It'll be in 412.
I'm sorry?
You'll see it in Fund 412 instead of Fund 412.
The portion of, that goes to our treatment plant doesn't come to the sewer fund. It goes to the wastewater treatment fund.
Okay.
So,
How do you
the
set,
portion that goes to VVWRA comes to the sewer fund and then is billed, and the sewer fund then pays VVWRA for the treatment.
So that sort of reflects our diversion.
Correct.
Down
and
below on the-
you have 218 study to say how much the fee should be, so you know how much to send to VVWRA and how much we keep?
Yeah, it's underway, and we'll be having workshops and all that will be coming to council.
Yeah,
That
we
study
adopted-
won't tell us what to send to VVWRA. That'll tell us what we're going to charge customers.
Correct. Right now, we charge customers all the same amount, which is based on the VVWRA rate.
And how to blend the rate, and how it needs to be structured. I mean, there's going to be a lot of...
Well, you have to, if you charge a separate customer, you have to keep it separate. You have to know how much of the rate goes to what funds. That's a requirement of 218. So, if you have, and I know it's difficult because it's made up with commercial use that all go there, residential use, our cost, pumping stations, lift stations, but I'd really like to see the study.
Yeah, that study is underway. It's about 90% complete.
Good.
We're
Wonderful.
hoping to have it,
It's kind of, we need to stop.
We need to see.
We need a break.
Yeah, I agree. We got 7 minutes. I'm through.
Yeah, one thought that I had to step out myself. One thought that I had, and this is really a question for you, Councilmember Kennedy, is we'd originally thought we were going to have a second workshop on the 16th of May. I know that you're unavailable on that night. So how comfortable would you be if we had one without you?
I'm okay. To give it to me to look at.
And if you're okay with that, then we would keep that workshop for the 16th.
I'm the problem in May. I know.
Yeah.
Can't help it.
You're generally the problem.
We
usually the problem.
We can stop right now, and it probably would be good to continue that. And of course, Councilman Kennedy, as always, we're available.
I have a lot of questions. I don't need the board people here with those, but I want answers, and so I'm assuming for us who have questions, just direct them to you,
Direct them to me. We'll get
and
it.
you get them back, and then that way on the 16th, I don't have to take up the whole meeting and answer questions.
Yep. And we will
All right,
make sure that the entire council gets the questions and answers that anybody submits.
All right, thank you.
Okay, have public comments still.
Oh, okay, so we have public comments?
If there are any, should ask for public comment if there's any.
Okay, we do have public comments. I don't know if we have anyone that has, I don't have any cards. I don't have anyone that wants to speak.
So we should adjourn, you want to adjourn this to the 16th?
So this meeting will be adjourned till
3 p.m.,
The
3
workshop.
p.m. on the 16th,
May 16th.
May 16th for another budget workshop.
So this meeting is adjourned till May
16th,
16th.
3 p.m.
At 3 p.m. And our meeting is adjourned.
Okay.